Performing Gaming 420.
Nothing can compare to who could have been.
And I think you would agree with that. In generally, do you think the rise of automation is going to change the way conservative values approach possibilities of moving upwards into society? And does that then necessitate possibilities like a universal basic income? And if not that, then what other solutions?
Yeah, so this is a great question, and I think it's becoming of increasing concern given the level of automation that's happening in the society. The vast majority of manufacturing jobs in the United States, contra Trump, have not been lost to Mexico and China. They've been lost to automation. Right? 85% of all those jobs have been lost to machines. So people are worried that machines will take over the world. So my particular perspective on this is that we have always worried that machines are going to take over the world. The Luddites were smashing the gears during the Industrial Revolutions because they were afraid that the machines were going to take over the world and they were all going to lose their jobs. Okay, we never could, like, there are certain things that we never would have imagined as jobs that are now full sectors of the economy. Like 40 years ago, if you wanted a cup of coffee, you went to a diner and got a cup of coffee for 5 cents. And now you have an entire massive industry dedicated to specializing in making you precisely your type of coffee. So until they make the replicator from Star Trek, that's the machine that makes other machines and magically makes all items they don't have a price and and they're all free. Once that happens, then universal basic income probably isn't even necessary. I mean, if you can actually just create everything with machines and everything is extraordinarily cheap, the price of everything drops near zero, and you don't need much income to live on. So there's that. I don't think we're there in the economy yet. I also don't think we're there in the economy to the point where all jobs have disappeared. The job trends have kept up with the technological trends. It's not like everybody is now out of work because the technology has gotten so good.
Right, and that may be true, but like let's just take the short term, for example. Like the rising possibility of automation in driving, for example, which is really soon.
So put Uber out of business.
And that would put approximately like 40%, because 40% of America is currently employed in the transportation industries.
Right.
That would cause, like, at the very least, a very large displacement in terms of jobs.
For sure.
Would a solution that then to be like a possibility of universal basic income? And if not, then like what?
So I have two problems. I have 2 problems with universal basic income. My first problem with universal basic income is that automatically, my view is that it causes inflation. If you just give people a bunch of money and tell them to spend it, then prices are going to rise accordingly because everybody's just going to adjust for the fact that everybody has more money to spend. It's helicopter cash. You drop helicopter cash all over the world, and the prices are automatically going to rise.
Well, the prices, the money would still be backed up by like physical goods though, because robots are still the one producing those physical goods. So it's not like there's
right, and so then, but now you're getting back to my first point, which is that if robots are producing everything, then we're all cool and who cares? They'll just keep producing everything forever and we're happy.
So then I guess in your case then,
So once the robots make everything free, then yes, I'm for universal basic income because everything's free. But until we have utopia and the robots make everything for free, there will be scarcity in the market. And as long as there's scarcity in the market, there needs to be a pricing system for that scarcity, because otherwise you're not going to produce more of that, you're going to produce less of it. So that's the basic economic point.
And there's also like the general point, which is that a larger point to this automation, which is that a lack of jobs would lead to a lack of purpose. And then
yes, no, it's totally true. But and so what I think is the question is whether there's a job lag, meaning people lose their jobs at Uber and then they just never work again, or is a job lag where they just find another job and it takes a little while for them to adjust. And I think that the history of economics shows that we have not yet reached the point where jobs just disappear wholesale. Right? If once we reach that point, then we can start talking about other solutions that we have not considered yet, because then we actually are not living in a capitalist economy. And a capitalist economy is driven by the idea that there is scarcity of capital and labor and resource, right?
Society.
If there's no scarcity, then we're talking about utopia. So I pray to God that future comes true and we have utopia and everything's free. That'll be wonderful. Until then, people are going to have jobs.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hey Ben, thanks a lot for coming. That was refreshing. The lefty stole my question. Go figure that one. So I will ask a different question. If you'd be so kind to indulge me, I'd like to ask you, who or what is God to you?
Who or what is God to me?
Yes, and what role, if any, does that play?
God's my man. I mean, it's. The creator of the universe, the master of heaven and earth. Who is God to me? God is, as an Orthodox Jew, I believe that God provided us a moral foundation in the Bible, and that moral foundation is, if you live by that moral foundation, you will live a happier, better life, freer of sin. I think that God provides the idea of an objective moral standard that immediately begins to crumble as soon as you get to a subjective idea that everybody can create their own morality. So that's I think, the role of God in society. As far as what is God to me personally, all I can say is that I don't believe in God. I know in God. I don't just have faith in God. I have trust in God. And so that may not end up well for me because it doesn't always end up well for people of faith. But I think that not recognizing God's providence over the universe for me particularly would be an act of tremendous ingratitude.
Amen. And I don't know as much about this topic as I maybe should ask this question. I'm kind of cribbing from Sam Harris here, but if the Sanhedrin were to be reconvened, would you become a fascist of sorts?
So Sam Harris, and I enjoy Sam Harris's books. The idea of a religious theocracy is not something that greatly appeals to me. So no, and I don't think that I think that originally, if you look at the Bible, the idea was that it was a monarchy. It wasn't ruled by the Sanhedrin. It was a constitutional monarchy where there was actually a quasi-balance of power between the king and the Sanhedrin. So the Sanhedrin would be the legal authority, and it was a legal authority. But the idea that it would become a religious fascist state, that, as it says right in the Talmud, the Bible is replete with talk about the death penalty, for example. It says in the Talmud that a Sanhedrin that had one person killed every 70 years was considered a murderous Sanhedrin. So, I think that the idea of the Taliban-like religious theocracy walking the streets, Judaism has moved a long way beyond that in the last 3,000 years.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you for coming. I'm going to ask some of my favorite questions to ask people who are into politics in general. What do you think about congressional gerrymandering, first past the post voting system in the Electoral College?
Okay, so congressional gerrymandering, my belief is that having any sort of quote-unquote objective body determining the districts is a mistake. That said, I think that the way that the gerrymandering system is currently done is ridiculous. I mean, you have districts that look like Rorschach tests that are specifically drawn by political parties in order to benefit particular political parties. There should be, I'm not sure that I have an on-the-spot solution for you to it, but gerrymandering is ridiculous, and I also think that a politically motivated board is ridiculous. There must be another solution that I haven't spent time thinking about, so I'll beg off that one a little bit. As far as the first past the post system, I'm actually increasingly in favor of a runoff system, meaning that if you have 3 candidates and nobody gets a majority, then you re-vote and you do it again, because that seems to me a fairer representation of what people think than a third candidate, a spoiler candidate comes in, and that spoiler candidate's votes all would have gone to the losing candidate, but now the winning candidate won. Like it's a weird system. So you have runoff systems in a lot of gubernatorial races all over the country. It seems to me that adopting that as the norm wouldn't be a terrible thing. As far as the Electoral College, I am of divided mind on the Electoral College. I think that it's great that the presidential candidates have to go and pay attention to a lot of states in the middle of the country that otherwise ignore. I think it would be a problem if they could only go to a bunch of major cities and talk there. And I think it would lead to the increasing polarization of the country if you had the Republican candidate just campaigning on every farm and the Democratic candidate campaigning in every inner city. And that's just how our politics work. So in that sense, I like the Electoral College because of the campaigning that it produces. The problem I have with the Electoral College is the same problem everybody else has with the Electoral College, which is I don't understand why my vote in California should mean nothing, but a vote in another state means more. And that seems to me bizarre. And I understand that it was a constitutional compromise, but part of that compromise was also designed to the idea that the Electoral College was going to negate a bad pick by the American people. I see no evidence the Electoral College would do anything of the sort. And so, another question where I see arguments on both sides, and I haven't completely made up my mind, to be honest with you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Ben. Thanks for coming out here. My question is, can you help me understand what is going through these leftist minds, specifically talking about like the Women's March, gay feminist movement, and they invite a woman supporting Sharia law.
Yeah, Linda Sarsour.
What is going on in their brain?
I mean, I think that these are alliances of convenience. I think that so long as people are dedicated to tearing down fundamental pillars of Western civilization, and a lot of feminists see Western civilization as a barrier. They see it as a patriarchal barrier to utopia they want to create, anybody who's willing to help them, they'll make an alliance of convenience with, no matter what other terrible views they hold. And that's which is a negative thing, but I think that kind of coalition politics, unfortunately, is far too common on all sides. I think a lot of people are willing to reach out to people who are willing to make common cause with them, even if those people are the worst people in the room. So, you know, do I think it's egregious? Yeah, I think it's egregious. I think Linda Sarsour is awful. And I think the Women's March is making an enormous mistake by associating with people like Linda Sarsour. Honestly, I think the Women's March is making an enormous mistake by pretending that women are oppressed in this country. And suggesting that their top priority should not be the attempts to liberate women all over the globe who really are living under oppression. But if you're going to have a women's march, if you are going to have a women's march, it seems kind of counterproductive to have a lady up there who is not in favor of women's rights in a number of different areas of the world.
It seemed to me like BLM supporting the KKK. I mean, that's how much that makes to me.
Well, again, I think that there, I'll say again, alliances of convenience, and you do see this a lot. I mean, you see, like, there'll be LGBT marches where they're carrying Palestinian flags. And you're thinking to yourself, wait a second, hold on, you know, hold up just a second. And the answer is, if your common cause is Western civilization is a threat to me, then that's your common cause for the moment. And later we'll fight. And, you know, it may make for some weird bedfellows, but maybe it makes for more successful politics from time to time.
Hi Ben, a huge fan of your podcast.
Oh, thank you.
My question has to do with the relation between the Trump administration and the media.
Mm-hmm.
So, from the beginning of Donald Trump's campaign, essentially when he declared his candidacy for the Republican nomination, he basically went to war with the leftist media. And he seemed to be one of the only Republicans who could actually hit back against the biased leftist media.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the reason why I got to like him. But since he was elected president, he seems to have a sort of disturbing tendency to declare any media source that disagrees with him as fake news. So he's essentially saying that we shouldn't trust any mainstream media source and we should only trust the Trump administration. So to what extent do you think this reveals totalitarian or fascist tendencies in Trump's ideology? And do you think we, especially people on the right wing, should be concerned about this?
Okay, so two things. First of all, the constitutional system is extremely durable. Donald Trump hasn't made any moves to actually restrict the freedoms of the press. Barack Obama actually did restrict freedoms of the press by tapping the phones at the AP and following James Rosen of Fox News. So it's important to mention that Trump hasn't actually done anything yet. As far as Trump's tendency to label any media he doesn't like fake news, or any poll he doesn't like fake polling, or all the rest of this, I think it's less totalitarian than just tremendous narcissism. I think Donald Trump in his house somewhere probably has a mirror shaped like Donald Trump, where each facet of the mirror reflects a portion of Donald Trump, but the entire mirror as a whole is Donald Trump. Right? So I think that anytime somebody disagrees with him, he gets very frustrated, he gets very angry, and he has to talk about the fake news. You're all fake news. Right? And when he does that routine, do I think that's a good thing for the President of the United States to be doing? No, I don't. I think it's...